Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. Guys, as always, I'm your host, Luke from SimBoxx. I'm joined by Josh Hart, and we are here to look ahead at this weekend's Matchroom card in Manchester, the greatest city on earth. And it's Jordan Gill against Zelfa Barrett, a real trade fight, a real 50-50 scrap that's got everyone divided in their opinions. We love nothing more as boxing fans for these kind of fights, hot on the heels of one of the fights of the year, one of the fights of the decade in Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark. Let's hope this is half as good as that, and we will be in for one hell of a treat. First and foremost, I'll bring in my co-host Josh. Josh, how's things? And before
Um,
before we bring Josh in, sorry, don't adjust your sets, don't adjust your cameras for those that watch us on YouTube. Josh is sporting a rather drastic new haircut, so tell us all about it, Josh.
well, where do I start? Well, obviously, recently it's been a bit of a new start and a new change in life for me. After two not so fantastic years, I was able to have my notice in a McDonald's, and I was like, do you know what? It's time for a change. So I text my mate on Sunday night. No, I texted him a couple of days before, but my mate's a barber. So I just texted him saying, mate, I want to get a buzz cut. Can you cut it for me? Because I didn't trust my actual barbers around the corner to do it because do you know what? I've tried them for about 4 or 5 years now. Let's just say at the start, I was leaving with some scandalous haircuts that got me a few not so nice comments at school. Um, and I just said, you know what? New start, new trim. I like it personally. I think I look good with it. I know it's a bit different, but I'm waking up in the morning now and I'm not having hair sticking up at the back. I just get up and I'm ready to hit the day. I'm ready to start. Um, and yeah, obviously with the new start, left my keys now officially full time in boxing, working for Seconds Out. Got my first gig with them tomorrow actually, or today, depending on when this goes out. But I'll be in Manchester for just a couple hours. I would like to do the whole fight week, but we don't get everything we want. I'm a very new man to this, but new trim, same me, same waffling content, and just pure greatness on this podcast.
Absolutely. Now, Josh, as we say, it's a matchroom card in Manchester. You'll be there working the media workout. I'll be there myself as SimBoxx at Fight Night, which I'm delighted for. It's a big event, and I love big events in Manchester. I'll be there at the press conference as well, so there'll be plenty of content coming to the SimBoxx YouTube channel. Keep an eye out for that. I think it's fair to say with this card, Josh, it's divided opinion a little bit on social media as it tends to do with matchroom cards. It's not really got that superstar appeal, but what it has got is 50-50 fights. It's got a couple of world title fights on there as well. Rhiannon Dixon going for her maiden world title at lightweight. Ellie Scottney looking to unify the super bantamweight division. Michael Gomez Jr. defending his English title against Kane Baker, which we'll touch on later, but that's got war written all over it, and then some really good and exciting prospects coming through. So I think it's fair to say it's a trade event, and it's not got that superstar appeal, but you go through the card and there's some really good fights to look forward to, including the main event, Jordan Gill and Zelfa Barrett. Both guys at this stage of the careers have took a couple of losses. They bounced back from defeats. Jordan Gill arguably coming off the best win of his career so far when he stopped Michael Conlan in dramatic fashion. I don't think many people give him a shot there. He was brought in as cannon fodder against Michael Conlan, and Jordan Gill upset the apple cart. On the other hand, Zelfa Barrett headlining at the Manchester Arena. I'm sure that would have been a bucket list event for him to be able to tick off that he's headlined in his hometown, his home city of Manchester. He's had his couple of losses. He's lost in his only world title fight, and I think it's fair to say the winner of this, Josh, positions himself correctly for a world title shot moving further into 2024.
I think I agree with that statement to an extent. For me, I think I can't, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing because I'd love to see it, but I can't picture Jordan Gill getting a world title shot or winning a world title. But people were saying the same thing about Lee Wood years ago, that they could never picture him winning a world title. And look what he's done. He's a two-time world champion, looking at becoming a two-weight world champion. Also, we don't know what's next for him. That's a completely different topic that I could talk hours on, and I'm not going to because we're not here to do that today. But no, I I like this fight a lot. I think I feel like the reason why this is getting so much stick is just this is a fight that you would never have imagined to headline. Obviously you headline Michael Conlan in Belfast because he's a big name in Belfast, and I know Zelfa Barrett's from Manchester, but I don't think he's made himself that standout fighter in Manchester yet. But I feel like this is that chance to become the standout fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Just touching that on there, Josh. Like it's something that I've been um, looking for recently. For a long time, Ricky Hatton held the mantle of King of Manchester boxing, and he for a long time sold out the Manchester Arena, and he took hordes of fans over to Vegas and different parts of America when that time came. When he went on to take the best in the welterweight division. After that, there was Anthony Crolla, who later on in his career, become somewhat of a superstar of British boxing. He had that fantastic run of fights, winning the lightweight world title. He had the unfortunate incidents outside of the ring, but it all built this kind of backstory that people were grown a lot of affection towards Anthony Crolla, and then he went on to headline quite a few events at the Manchester Arena, and since Crolla's retirement, there has been a vacancy there for a Manchester boxer to grasp with both hands and kind of put their stand down and kind of take that mantle as this is Manchester boxing, this is my home, and Zelfa for a long time has felt like he was going to be that guy along with Lyndon Arthur, both fighting out of Colliers and Boston Gym under Pat Barrett. And it's not quite happened. And as you say, that maybe he's not headlined before, he's not had a fight of this magnitude, but maybe this is the one where he kicks down the door and with a good performance on Saturday can bring those world titles fights back to Manchester.
I said, I fully agree with that. I don't think there's anyone who knows more about Manchester boxing than yourself. I feel like it's a very fitting fight week to be talking about. Obviously, so when you look at Manchester, it's always for me from when I've been in boxing. Obviously, I'm not going to sit and say I've been in boxing my whole life because I've not. Um, but for as long as I can remember watching boxing, Manchester's always been one of the homes for big fights. But it's like you said, it's lacked that Manchester fighter, that standout star, like obviously like your Ricky Hattons and your Anthony Crollers. But I feel this weekend, if Zelfa Barrett pulls it off, and gets the win in what is a very tough fight, the bookies have got it really, really close. It is one of those fights that shouldn't be as close as it is, but based on just the sheer, you know, disbelief of the upset from the last one, from Jordan Gill's last fight, I can't split them. I know we're not meant to make the predictions yet, and that's why I'm gonna have time to think. But at the moment, it is such a close fight, and the winner does take a massive, massive step towards a world title. And I feel like that's where I feel like for the same time, I feel like for the loser, I feel like it is a massive step back. I feel like it'll sling them right back down the ladder because I don't think these are fighters that belong at the British level or European level. These are fighters that are pushing world level now. Um, Obviously, Zelfa Barrett's already had the world title fight. When I last interviewed him, he said how much he's learned from that. Jordan Gill has had his own struggles, and not just in the ring but out the ring, and they're gonna have made him a much tougher man. And I feel like a man that's gonna be really hard to beat. And I feel like something that's obviously going to be mentioned a lot over the course of the next few days over the fight week is the team up with Ben Davison. I said this on the Seconds Out live yesterday. Ben Davison is probably for me the best coach in the world at the moment. When you look at what he's done for fighters and how he's transformed these fighters and this list of fighters that he's worked with and worked with now can go on and on and on. And everything he's done for them. Lee Wood is a prime example. And Lee Wood is someone who's spent the best part of the last 10, 15 odd years with Jordan Gill. They're best mates. And I just think Jordan Gill being in that environment and having such a good team behind him, I feel like we could see a really, really different type of fighter. And I do feel this weekend the winner, and I know I just said I don't imagine Jordan Gill getting a world title shot, and I know he was asking for it after the last one, but I feel like if he's coming off a win against Michael Conlan and then Zelfa Barrett, world title shot, and the same thing can be said for Zelfa. He's already proved himself that he can hang about at world level. He was beating Rakimov in the fight before he got stopped. And I do really feel the winner of this fight is going to go on and have a massive, massive fight in maybe late summer, maybe autumn.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the more fascinating aspects to this fight for me is Ben Davison in the corner. It's one thing that I like to look at as well in these high profile fights is Ben Davison in one corner, Pat Barrett in the other corner, two of the finest minds in British boxing in terms of trainers and as you say in world boxing. And I think with as you say, the stage of the careers that they're at, they both had. I think Jordan Gill's had 31 fights, Zelfa Barrett having 32. It is going to be difficult to see where the loser does position themselves because they're not going to go back down to British title level, as you say. I think each man's respective age, around 30 or so, they've got plenty of time on the side. The gap, though, for me, as much as I would say the winner of this deserves a world title shot, I think there's a big jump. Like, Zelfa acquitted himself well against Rakhimov in what was a tough fight. Dropped Rakhimov and was ultimately stopped himself, but there was something not quite right there. I think it was some sort of injury. But you look at the top of that division, you got Oscar Valdez, interim WBO champion. Navarrete is going to fight for the lightweight world title, so it looks like Oscar Valdez will be promoted to full WBO lightweight world champion. You got Shaki Foster, you got Joe Cordina, Lamont Roach Jr. These guys are serious operators. So as much as the win is in line for a world title shot, or potentially a world title shot, is there an argument to say that they could do with another interim fight before jumping up to world title level? You got Joe Cordina, obviously the Welshman, defending against Kakache in May. I think there's very much a possibility of him defending against the winner of this, given that he's a matchroom fighter, and that would sell here in UK. So I think that maybe is the most logical fight for the winner, if we're going to go down that route. Yeah, of the current world champions, if we're counting Oscar Valdez as a WBO champion, Josh, the winner of this fight, who would you be looking to target in terms of, I wouldn't want to say the easiest route to a world title because they're all elite operators, but yeah, which way would you position a fighter, the winner, sorry, of this fight to a world title?
I mean, if I was the promoter, if I was Eddie Hearn, I'd be looking at Joe Cordina straight away because I feel like Joe Cordina is going to beat Anthony Kakachi in May, and that's no disrespect to Kakachi, but I'm allowed my opinion. He can happily go and prove me wrong, and I don't have a problem with it. But I feel Joe Cordina gets past him. And then obviously Joe Cordina has been screaming out for a big fight. And I know he's got a big fight with Kakachi, but I think it's a fight that's going to be so massively overlooked based on the fact that it's on the biggest card we've probably seen in the last what three. No, I don't even know. It's one of the biggest cards. It's the biggest fight we've seen in a very, very long time. Uh, no disrespect to any of the fighters on the undercard, um, but all the attention that week is going to be on Fury and Usyk. No one's going to be sat there unless you're like us, like pure boxing fans. We'll be looking at the undercard and we'll be sat here on the fight week in this exact same spot now talking about these undercard fights. Um, but I feel like Joe Cordina wants one of those fights where the fans can get their teeth into it properly, and it's a fight where he's headlining. I feel like he wants that big fight at one of the stadiums in Cardiff. So I don't really think you can take him back to the arena because the Cardiff
Hmm.
arena simply
Hmm.
just too small. Um, at the same time, if Zelfa's to win, Zelfa versus Joe Cordina at the AO Arena, 21,000 seats available to be sold there. Might not do that number, but there's a chance to do good numbers. It's
Yeah,
an all British world title fight. For Jordan Gill, again, he's mentioned one in the stadium fight at home. That's always on the table. So if we're looking at what's going to do the best for numbers and for money and what generates the most interest, you'd say Joe Cordina. But I also feel at the same time that's one of the tougher ones you want to get.
yeah,
I don't really feel like anyone wakes up or anyone in that division wakes up and goes, "Yeah, I want to fight Joe Cordina," because he's a scary man. We've seen what he does in the ring. He's a very, very elite fighter. Um, if I was to look at one that I feel like, no, see, no, they're not the most beatable to me because there's a huge gap between me and Jordan Gill and Zelfa Barrett. They are, but the most beatable fighter for them. Oh, I'd say Shaki Foster's one that you defo want to target. I feel like in his last fight, it was a really good fight, but that's going to put some miles on not his last fight because he's fought already this year, hasn't he?
hmm
He picked up that split decision over Abraham Nova, but that wasn't a great performance, if we're being honest.
yeah. Was it Hernandez before that?
Yeah, then that was the one I was thinking of, the Hernandez fight in Mexico, because that's a fight that's gonna. I know it's been a big talking point with Wardley Clark, but fights that will take miles off, like
Yeah,
take years off your career. And that fight with Hernandez was one of those types of fights. So I feel like Shaki Foster, Oscar Valdez as well. Um, Obviously the only thing with Valdez is he's coming off a good win and a very good win against what was a very tough Liam Wilson.
yeah.
It was
He
a
can
fight
blow
where
hot
I
and
was,
cold though, Valdez. Can't he? Can blow hot and cold, Valdez. You've seen him when he's knocked out like Miguel Bachelt, which was a brutal knockout. As
oh
you
yeah,
say,
yeah,
you've seen him
100%.
stop a really good Liam Wilson. But then other fights, he can flatter to deceive. So you might be onto something there.
I say it just depends because it depends what Valdez turn. Again, it's like any
Mm-hmm.
fight. It depends what type of fighter turns
Mm-hmm.
up. But with Valdez, he's either on it or just completely flat and just
Yeah.
has no answer. So if I was to pick out of those two, I'd probably lean towards O'Shaquie Foster because I feel like you kind of know a little bit more what to expect. He's coming off a really tough fight and a very mediocre performance against someone that I feel like he should have been beaten a little bit easier than what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's how I see it. People might see it differently. I don't mean any disrespect with what I've said there. I'm going to reiterate that a lot because I don't want to just say things that wind up fighters, but I've got my opinion. Like I said, they can go and prove me wrong. And the winner of this fight could get a Shaki Foster, and a Shaki Foster could absolutely blitz through them.
Yeah.
And I'd take my hat. Well, I've not got a hat on, but I'd take my hat off and say fair play because that's boxing. That is boxing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for my 10 pence worth, I think with Joe Cardine, I think it's interesting because I think they've tried making that Zelfa Barrett fight
Mm.
for Joe before now, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but it's almost as if he's targeting above that. That he's kind of done those kind of fights, and maybe he's more interested in unifications now, and maybe trying to push towards undisputed. So let's take that as a train of thought and play a bit of fantasy promoter here, Josh. I was having this idea of if that's the case, if he goes uh, anti-Kakache and then a unification fight later in the year, that's going to leave a lot of certainly domestic super featherweights with a lot to do. And a couple of the super featherweights that I'm going to mention are guys that we do believe are going to move up from featherweight. So what if we had this idea of Zelfa Barrett, Jordan Gill, they fight. Then on the back of that, Jordan Gill was to fight Josh Warrington because they've got a bit of needle there with Jordan Gill being really good friends with Lee Wood, and we know all the story there with Lee Wood and Josh Warrington. That fight doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon with the rematch between Warrington and Wood. So those two guys are going to need fights and fairly soon. So if we had Jordan Gill against Josh Warrington at super featherweight, and then we had Zelfa Barrett against Lee Wood, and it's some sort of playoff, if you like, two finals and a final, whilst the main players at world title level are all involved in unification fights. I think that's certainly something. If again we're playing fantasy promoter and there's a lot of discussions to be had and hurdles to be jumped, it's not as easy as just sitting on a podcast with us two and putting it together like this. But I think that'd certainly be something British boxing fans could get their teeth into.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you sold me from when you said Jordan Gill versus Josh Warrington. Again, it's such a similar fight to the Lee Wood Josh Warrington fight. In fact, it's a fight that if we said 3 years ago, you would never have thought it happened.
Yeah,
But now you look where they are today, and it kind of can be a likely fight. I think the only thing that'll hold that back is Eddie Hearn has said Warrington or Wood are his possible picks for the 5v5 at 126, which I don't think we'll see Lee Wood because he has said on a numerous amount of occasions now since the Warrington fight that his days at 126 are over. Ben Davison said he's not been happy with the way Lee Wood's made weight since the Zhu Can fight. So I'd be unless they're throwing Lee Wood an absolute silly amount of money, I highly doubt we'll see him in Saudi. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I like the Lee Woods Alpha Barrett fight though as well. And obviously with Lee Warrington's only really going to move up for me if it's the Lee Wood fight. But if not, I feel like because Warrington's been a career 126 fighter, I feel like he can still make that weight. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand it's tough, but he can still make that and perform at a good level. Whereas I think Lee Wood's at that stage now where he can't make that weight. He'll
yeah,
if he makes that weight, he'll be finished. Like he'll struggle on the fight night. Um, I think it's just all about this weekend, first of all, and seeing what happens between Jordan Gill and Zelfa Barrett. And obviously, if Cordina is looking at these unifications, which I'm sure he's going to be now, he's defended his title, what, two? No, not two times. He won it against Rakimov, defended it against Vasquez, and then
did he
for
vacate and then win it back?
no, so he got stripped, didn't he? He got stripped when he won it against what was his name?
Ogawa.
Ogawa, that's it.
Yeah,
'Cause he won it, but then he had the hand injury, so he was meant to
yeah,
defend against Rakimov that November
hmm
on the Bivol card,
yeah,
but got stripped because of his hand injury and then won it back against Rakimov, fought Vasquez, and then I think it's the fight with Kakashi. That's his second defense, and after two
Yeah, I think
defenses,
you're
you're
right.
gonna look for a unification. Um, but I think it all just comes down to what happens this weekend. One thing that has crossed my mind, and this will never ever happen. I feel like you already know what I'm about to say, but Jordan Gill versus Lee Wood, because it's the fact I know it's never going to happen, but they're both if Jordan Gill wins this weekend, they're going to be in such similar positions in their careers of they're both on the verge of a world title shot at 130. I feel like no matter what, they'll never fight each other, but I feel it's a fight that may come across in some conversations, but it will never happen because I feel like those two have got such a strong friendship that they
Yes.
will not fight each other. They're not gonna. No amount of money could split that friendship, especially when they're also under the same camp now as well. Um, if that's not a spanner in the works, then I don't know what is really. But it's very the 130 pound division in the UK is going to be very, very interesting after this week. It's already interesting now, but I feel like once we see Warrington and Wood fully get in the mix and the other fighters get in the mix, it's a very, very interesting division to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you say, it all can take a bit more shape after Saturday. Josh, I'm going to push you for a prediction here, and this is kind of like a backwards thing for me to say because I'm going to push you for a prediction, which means I'll give mine when I'm still not 100% certain on where I'm going with my prediction. So, seeing as though I'm the host, I'll throw the ball into your court first
I
and
feel,
give
I
it up
feel
to you
like this
first.
happens every single time we go for a prediction. And I think every single time we do a prediction, you just throw it to me first, like because it gives you that extra time to think. Right. Hmm. See, I don't want to see either fighter lose because I like both fighters. And it's one of those fights that is such a good fight, yes, but you don't want. It's like Wardley Clark. I really like Wardley and Clark,
Mhm.
and the draw, while it's not ideal, best result because neither of them lost. I don't want to see a draw this weekend because I kind of want to see how this division's going to play out. Um, I think I'm going to tip Zelfa Barrett. I think Zelfa's just got that little bit more experience at elite level, has had those tougher fights against people, and I feel as well something that has played into my head is obviously you mentioned the elite trainers with Pat with having Ben Davison and Pat Barrett, but there's a difference. So Ben Davison is someone who knows boxing, but with Zelfa and Pat, it's they know each other. And there's no in boxing, but then there's no in your fighter. And there's a much stronger bond there because of not just the fact they're related, but it's the fact that, they've been together for so long. Pat's gonna know Zelfa inside out. Whereas I feel like Ben Davison might not know Jordan Gill. I don't really understand Jordan Gill's got his dad in his corner, but and no disrespect to his dad is not anywhere close to what Ben Davison is.
Mhm.
Obviously, I know his dad can play a massive part, but Ben Davison is such an elite boxing brain. Um, he can transform a fighter, but is the two fights enough? Obviously, I don't. Again, we're gonna have to cast this back to the Lee Wood story with Ben Davison. Ben Davison only had one fight and then won the world title with Lee Wood against Kanju, who was a very, very good fighter at the time. But I do feel Zelfa Barrett is a bit of a different level of opponent. And I feel like there's a lot more riding on this fight um, for Jordan because I feel like it's one of those fights where there's nothing massive, there's no title on the line. I feel like it is a winner stays on type of fight, and the loser will really struggle to get themselves back. More not with the age, but with how much they've already done in their career. There's already a lot of miles on the clock for both. Obviously, Jordan's already had some tough fights in the past and had some brutal beatdowns from people. Um, but I'm going to go Zelfa Barrett. I'm not going to go what way he's going to win. Um, However, I'm going to completely contradict myself here. And I do fancy a stoppage from him. So we're going to ignore the fact that I'm not going to pick my way he wins because I'm going to pick the way he wins. I think he's going to stop Jordan Gill very, very late on in like rounds 11 or 12 or it'll be a point win. But I feel like it'll be a really close fight though. And my head, I could change my mind tomorrow and Thursday and Friday after seeing how they are on the fight week. And I feel like there could be, I think there's a bit more pressure on Zelfa than Jordan because Jordan's not expected to do as much. This is Zelfa's hometown. This is Zelfa's occasion. Will that get to him? We don't know. There's only one way to find out, and that's to see how he handles it in the ring on Saturday. I think it's something that'll personally be a big boost for him because you never want to do not well. You never want to poorly perform in front of your home crowd. Like obviously with me being such an experienced man in the ring and fighting in my hometown, I didn't want to poorly perform when I fought. However, I still poorly performed. And I think Zelfa's just got that little bit extra boxing knowledge than what I do. So I feel like he'll know that he needs to perform. But no, I'm going to lock in a Zelfa Barrett technical knockout in rounds 11 or 12.
Big call, big call. Josh, my prediction for Jordan Gill against Zelfa Barrett. I think this is a terrific matchup. One that's kind of come from left field, given that Jordan Gill was on the boxing scrap heap for a long time after that loss to Kiko Martinez. He brought himself back into contention with a brilliant stoppage of Michael Conlan. Zelfa Barrett, on the other hand, he got that world title shot against Rakhimov. He came up short, but he acquitted himself well. And in the two fights since then, he was out twice in 2023. He picked up two convincing points wins against Costin Ion and Jason Sanchez. Not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, but he looked like a world class fighter in those wins. He acquitted himself the way an elite operator should against subpar opposition. Jordan Gill, whilst he has had that terrific knockout against Michael Conlan, that was his only fight in around 18 months or so. So activity is certainly going to be an issue, and you're going to wonder if there's a bit of ring rust there maybe. So for me, Zelfa Barrett is the fresher fighter. I don't begrudge either man a victory. I like them both a lot, but allegiances go out the window when it comes to a prediction. You've got to call it how you see it. And for me, Zelfa Barrett is the fresher man. He's on an upward trajectory, and I think he gets the job done here. I think it'll be a very entertaining fight, and I think it's a fight that will go the distance. And you'll see Jordan have his moments. We've seen in numerous fights that he has that power, that he underrated power, that he can pull out a shot late in a fight. He can come from behind and get the stoppage wins we've seen in European title fights before. So he's going to be dangerous. He will have his moments, but I think overall, Zelfa Barrett, with his movement, with that jab, that it's a terrific style that he's got, and I think that will see him get home safe with a unanimous points victory. As you say, headlining Manchester for the first time, I think that's going to bring out that extra 1% that will make the difference come fight night, and I think this will be a real breakout victory for Zelfa Barrett in terms of getting back into that world title level as we move into 2024. So yeah, my prediction: Zelfa Barrett unanimous decision victory in an entertaining fight.
I like the prediction. I like the prediction. I feel like we quickly got to just quickly look at the undercard. Like you mentioned, it's not one of those cards that fans are looking at and going, "Wow, this is fantastic." I feel like a big knock to the undercard has been the loss of Cameron Vong versus Jordan Flynn. Because while it's a fight between two fighters early on in their career, it was a fight that boxing fans really liked the look of. A 4-0 fighter versus a 9-0 fighter with, okay, he's got the one draw. Not Jordan Gill, Jordan Flynn is still out this weekend on the card. Um, but by no means in the fight he wanted to be in. Um, but for me, I'm going to ask you a different one here. Who are you most excited to see on the undercard? Because I know who I've got, but I want to see who you're going to say.
In terms of the undercard, there's a couple of fighters that I like. Brandon Scott is very entertaining in and out of the ring. He's coming back from hand injury, so he's going to be looking to get his name back out there. Rhiannon Dixon, I think it's the right time for her to get a world title shot in a tough fight against Carbajal, who's only lost to Katie Taylor. But Michael Gomez Jr. against Kane Baker. I think this is a sink or swim moment for Michael Gomez Jr. His dad, for a long time, he had his issues out of the ring, but he had a good career. He could have had a great career. Michael Gomez Jr. is going to go and look to fulfill the promise that his dad never did and forge his own path. And in Kane Baker, he's coming up against somebody that's an away fighter, but certainly by no means a journeyman. He comes to win, and he's the kind of fighter that will find people out. If you're not on it, if you're not on the ball, and if you're cutting corners in training, he's the kind of guy that will find you out on fight night. And Michael Gomez is a come forward fighter, and these two guys are going to meet in the middle of the ring. There's going to be not a backward step given. So I think for me, Michael Gomez Jr. against Kane Baker, whilst they're not superstars, I think it's a good matchup at this stage of Michael Gomez Jr.'s career, and that's the fight that I'm looking forward to most.
So yeah, I could not agree with anything more that you just said there. I'm so excited to see the return of Brandon Scott. Obviously, a great fighter and just a great entertainer in and out of the ring. But no, for me, I fully agree with the Michael Gomez Kane Baker fight. It's just one of those fights that just has it for me. It's one of those fights you just look at and it just screams a fight of the night. Michael Gomez Jr., obviously, I know he's had the very controversial win that's gone under the radar over Levi Giles. I'm going to bring light to that because it's a fight that a lot of people who did watch the fight scored to Levi. So I feel like you said, sink or swim. I feel like he needs a big performance, not just a performance. He needs to get a big performance and a convincing victory. Um, and then for Kane Baker, like you said, never in a dull fight, comes to win no matter what. Obviously coming off two great fights with Jordan Flynn, who's obviously on the card as well. That's the really disappointing thing with Cameron Vong being off the card as well. Imagine the carnage at the press conference when you've got Jordan Flynn on stage with Michael Gomez Jr., Kane Baker, who he wants the winner of, and then also Cameron Vong, who let's just say they're not the best of pals. They're not going to go and have a drink with each other until after the fight. Um, but for me, Kane Baker, he just comes to fight every time, and I do feel like you said, he'll find you out if you're not on it. And I do really, really feel that'll be a fight that I think it's a fight that's going to capture the headlines in the end. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight, and the only way I see it not making the headlines is if Jordan Gill versus Zelfa Barrett is also a fantastic fight, or unless something massively controversial happens, because controversy always takes the lead when it comes to headlines. But no, I agree with what you said. Michael Gomez Jr. versus Kane Baker is going to be the fight of the night. And I think Kane Baker might very well pull off the upset. This is a very, very big opportunity for someone like him. And the way his career's played out, for him, he's going to have treated this like a world title fight. He's been out in Mexico sparring for this fight. You cannot tell me he's not taking it seriously when he spent time in Mexico. You don't go to Mexico for a holiday when you're about to fight for an English title. You go out there if you want to win. So I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. I cannot wait for it.
Absolutely, second everything you've just said there, Josh. Also on the card, you've got the likes of Jack Turner, Stephen Clark, Jimmy Sains, some of the the best boxing prospects on the Matchroom stable, along with William Crawler as well, young brother of Anthony Crawler. So it's a big night for Anthony Crawler with Rhiannon Dixon going for her first world title. Fantastic story. Won the Commonwealth title. Very next fight, she wins the European title. Very next fight, she's going in for a world title. So fantastic journey for Rhiannon Dixon. But one fighter that seems to be criminally underlooked, Josh. And in this day and age of women's boxing rightfully getting their flowers, and you got the likes of Katie Taylor, Chantel Cameron, amongst others, Natasha Jonas, Clarissa Shields on the world stage. These ladies are really running with the baton for women's boxing. But Ellie Scotney, she's looking at unifying world titles in only her ninth pro fight. She trained obviously by Shane McGuigan. She's won the world title. She's defended it once, and now she goes in against an 18-0 opponent in Lebev. Hopefully pronounced that name right. But yeah, a huge opportunity. And we've got 4 or 5 minutes left of the podcast. I think it's only right that we
Hmm.
champion this for Ellie Scotney, and maybe win time if she goes up through the weights, she might get those plaudits and those bigger fights that somebody as skilled as she is, because she's a fantastic operator. She's really entertaining. She really does deserve, and yeah, it's a big fight for her on Saturday night. She looks to unify in only a ninth professional fight.
It is a massive fight. Obviously, I've started to see her a lot more because I don't know about you, but I've watched the stable on BBC iPlayer. Obviously, all about Shane McGuigan and Ellie Scotney's a very big part of that. She's in every episode because she's been with Shane for I think has she been with Shane for a whole career or nearly her whole career? Um,
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah. But no, unification not as well. It's not just she's unifying, but it's against the 18-0 undefeated fighter as well. It is a fantastic fight. And something that has gone massive. I feel like with her not being at the launch presser as well, probably slept put a little bit under the radar.
Hmm.
Because it was not mentioned on that top table because she wasn't there. But I think I think it's a really good fight. And like I said, a massive opportunity for her as well. If she unifies in just her ninth fight, it starts to give you the signals of when you know you've got a star on your hands. And she could easily be someone that once Katie Taylor's and the Clarissa Shields are all gone, she could be that front runner for women's boxing, the face of women's boxing, you could say. Especially for UK boxing, with a win this weekend. And obviously, like I said, she'll move through the weights. And she could, if she wins this weekend, she can really go on to do some special, special things. Undisputed at this weight, probably go look up a weight, even probably go down a weight. Um, but no, definitely a massive opportunity for her this weekend as someone that's gone criminally under the radar.
Absolutely, Josh. Well, that kind of wraps up everything that we needed to touch on this week's episode of Let's Talk Boxing. I'll implore our listeners to please continue helping build our journey with the podcast. Hit that like button on YouTube, hit the subscribe button on the SimBoxx YouTube channel. We've got plenty of content coming on the way. The last episode we had, the Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley preview, that done combined over 100 views and listens on all platforms. So we're looking at building in the right direction. We're a self-funded, self-promoted platform. So, whilst they're not the astronomical numbers of the bigger platforms, we are trying to get there, and it all helps, guys. So any comments, feedback, let us know. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, we'll be back real soon with another episode of Let's Talk Boxing. Josh, thanks for your time this evening.
So, mate, thank you very much. Had a great time.